Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Keeping It Real AFL Fantasy Podcast. As always, I'm joined by Coach Nick of Nowvenator. Nick, how good is it to be back in the Keeping It Real studios?
It's great space. Now, last week was a lot more difficult.
Sure.
We were separated. I was in Melbourne and we did the podcast over Zoom. So there were some challenges with that.
Certainly.
Looking at your own noggin while you're speaking is a lot harder than you think on a Zoom screen.
Yeah, it rattles you, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think it rattled Asher Lanch as well.
Oh, definitely.
So I think that was our worst podcast so far that we've done, but we're back in HQ. And it should be a better result this week.
It's just good to have you in front of me again, mate.
Yeah,
it's not
in
good
person.
looking through a screen, like, if you just don't have the chemistry, that was completely off. But again, back in the studios and ready to get back into another round of footy.
Yeah.
So how'd your team go this week?
I actually had a loss this week, so I took on Lincoln's selection of players. Yeah, a bit of a down week. Link went really well, so he's got a pretty strong side. But yeah, a couple lacklustre performances from me. Isaac Heaney's been really disappointing, but we'll probably get into that in a sec. So yeah, took a loss in keepers, but my classic team's going really well. Just outside the top 10,000 after starting poorly with Tristan Zeri, but I feel like I'm climbing up the ranks in classic.
Yeah, it's really good to hear, man. It's really nice.
How did your team go?
Yeah, well, my draft team's just continuing its shocking start to the year. I'm 0-3. Came up against Lobi-1 Kenobi this round and took the L by about 80, 90 odd points. Yeah, couple of players continue to disappoint, but the big exciting factor in my team that we'll get into a bit later is Tommy Stewart's early return, and boy, isn't he back in form.
He is. He had a great week last week. Not that I saw the game, but I did see his dream team score, and he's gone down a lot in price in Classic, so everyone's going to be jumping on him this week. So we'll get into the segment we do every week, which is obviously the Gurus, the Child Prodigy, and the Heartbreaker.
Absolutely.
So the Guru being the player of the round. So who did you have there?
Well, we touched on him just a moment ago, but mine was Tommy Stewart. He's in my draft team. He was broke my heart in round one when he went down early with an injury, but his early return and a score of 126. I watched most of that Gold Coast Geelong game, and he just loves a +6. Mm-hmm. Just chipping it around the back line, the mark and the kick. Doesn't even mind going for a run after a mark, giving a hands and getting the old 1-2. So he can even get 8 points on those scores, which is really great to see for my team. Who was your Guru?
So for me, I had Sean Darcy, and I obviously mentioned him in my prediction last week. Mm-hmm. Took on Bailey Williams and just ate him for breakfast, really. So,
and Jake Wardman, what a leap!
Oh yeah, he was pinch hitting. So 128. I predicted a 120 plus score, 128. So I nailed that there.
A massive call there.
52
against
hit-outs and a goal. Well, 120 is still a decent score after he got 61 last week. I was unsure with the ruck split with Jackson, so I was happy to see that Sean took probably a higher percentage than he did the week before. So yeah, he's obviously my Guru after 128.
Yeah, it's a great Guru choice you got there, mate. So we'll hop into our child prodigies. Who did you have in that department?
So I found this one a little bit tricky to decide. There's obviously been the ones that we've selected already, Jinmi and Ashcroft and Hollands and all these guys. I couldn't really split Darcy Wilmot and Jacob Van Rooyen. So the big Roo on debut kicking 3 goals was exciting to see. But big
boy though, for what, 19?
He is a big competitor. But Wilmot, I was at that game live actually at Marvel Stadium, and I really like the way he goes about it. So I'm going to give it to Darcy Wilmot. Yeah, with a 60 odd, I think he got.
Very deserving. He's in a lot of folks' classics teams at the moment. So happy with that call. So my prodigy of the round, he was probably the obvious choice. With a score of 94, I think it was, and that was Cam McKenzie. After a really solid contribution round one, and then a down performance last week, he bounced back in Hawthorn's win with a really strong score. However, it did also break my heart at the same time, because he was actually on my bench in my classic team.
Who'd you field instead?
Warple and Ashcroft were my 2 worst midfielders. So there were reasons.
Weird team balance, that.
I wanted to get Zeeble in, and so I had to trade out a midfielder and move one of my premium forwards into my midfield, which pushed out, obviously, a rookie midfield spot. And that happened to be Cam McKenzie. So, good for Cam. Great to see he's performing well. He'll be on my field this week and hopefully can continue those scores of 90 plus throughout the year. So who was your heartbreaker for round 3, Nick?
You will not get an easier selection than this.
Yeah.
So I took this guy with my second forward pick. I went early on the forwards because, as we all know, there's not many.
Mm-hmm.
I got Dunkley with pick 2, and then pretty shortly after I took Isaac Heaney in the draft. So
Oh, no.
he scored 28 points this round.
Oh,
He's averaging 57 for the year. Now,
he's got a high score of 79 in there. That's not too bad.
To be fair, I haven't seen a lot of Sydney's games, and they got smacked, or they got beaten pretty easily by Melbourne, so it would have been a tough day in that forward line, but just hasn't performed so far this year. They've had some big wins, Swans, in the first 2 rounds, and he hasn't got into the 80s yet. So he's been really disappointing all year, but particularly this round with a 28. You would have thought taking Heaney, he would have been high on most people's draft boards and on all their Excel documents, but he's really let me down so far this year.
Yeah, those Excel documents definitely would have had Heaney up there. My heartbreaker of the round, it's a really disappointing one because, again, he was actually my first pick in my forward line in the draft league, and that's Zach Butters.
Okay.
So, had a decent score around 1 of 88, and we'll take those scores, but a score of 66 last week, 66 2 weeks ago and 50 odd last week. He's just not performing anywhere near the standard that I'd expect my F1 to be performing at, and he's symptomatic of how Port Adelaide are performing this week, this season.
You see much of Port Adelaide this year? Is he playing in the middle?
He's getting some CBAs, not as many as I would like, but again, I'd still expect better from Zach Butters. 59 is just not going to cut it for me this year. But there's no other forward to choose from, so he's obviously going to stay on my field for probably the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. I've got Cunnington on the bench, so you might want to trade a good mid if you want some forward depth, mate.
Well, I think Butters is still averaging more than Cunnington, so
he's your F1. Who else you got there? Not much.
Jeremy Cameron, superstar, even in a loss against Gold Coast, put up a score of 104. Wow. So we will absolutely take that.
Good pick. Cop that, Pet Money Sniper.
Yeah, Pet Money Sniper's cool. Coming back to haunt him yet again. However, Luke Jackson also on my field this week in my forward line, score of 95. I don't think he'll be doing that too often unless he comes up against Bailey Williams again, which he will in about round 20. So hope that goes well then. And then fucking Jaden Stevenson, excuse my language there, but I think it's certainly justified. Jaden Stevenson scored a 41. Mate, this bloke hates the second half. He, the first 2 rounds, he was 35 plus and finished in the 50s.
What do you reckon? Is fitness or can't run out games like Tanner Bruin, according to you?
Well, Tanner Bruin's put in another score of 40, mate, so that pick is
traded him.
Absolutely going down the drain. But no, Stevenson, Tanner Bruin, I know this will probably be a controversial call and will get me on Footy Classified or something. But maybe
your headline.
Maybe his attitude's just not in the right... Maybe his head's not in the right spot. Comes across as quite an arrogant kid in my view. We all saw his reaction on draft night.
They're just guesses.
We all saw his reaction on draft night when he got picked up by GWS. He was not happy to be there, and so it was absolutely no surprise 2 years later when he requested a trade. But
I have heard that is just his face. That he just doesn't...
He's got a resting bitch face. Again, sorry for the language, but...
Yeah.
Again, justified.
Well, we did hear Asher Lanch last week mention that he reckons second half of the year it's going to be Tanner Bruin averaging 85 plus, I think was the direct quote. So he reckons it's going to take a while for Geelong and everyone to work out that he's a good player. He needs to settle into the Geelong midfield a bit more, maybe wait for an injury or two so he gets more opportunity. So that's what we heard from Asher Lanch last week, and I actually tend to agree. I'm still a big Tanner Bruin fan, but at the moment, just not getting the opportunity.
What opportunity are you referring to? Because
limited game time, limited CBAs. He's an inside mid. He's getting a bit of time on the wing as well. Mm-hmm. But I think he's a really talented player. Uses the ball really well, and I think he's got some weapons in the inside.
I don't think you can chalk a score of 42 down to limited game time. I think that's just pure talent.
Talent? What, finding the ball and not having enough...
Well, 42, you get normal game time at 42. You're still not posting a score of anything half decent, I still think there's a lot to work on there. Player of the future, sure, but this season I copped a lot of flack for not thinking much of him at the start of the season, and at the moment I'm being proved absolutely right.
Yep, that is true actually, but we'll wait and see if Asher Lanch, his prediction comes true. Now, what I thought we'd do is look through the transactions that have been made. I'm not sure there's been any sort of direct team-to-team trades. I've just seen that...
There've been some offers.
Yeah, there's been offers. Lincoln Selection of Players has offered me Peter Laddams a few times, which I've very quickly declined. I can see right now that Lincoln Selection of Players has actually offered Dylan Shield to the league, who I was actually trying to trade for back a week or so ago, because I'm looking for some midfield depth. So Lockie Ash for me is going to get back status, I hope, pretty soon, and that'll mean I'm after some midfield depth. So I actually might propose the trade for that. But there hasn't been many trades. They've mainly just been delistings and picking people up off the scrap heap. So
I've certainly done a few of those myself.
So I noticed today you've dumped Jeremy McGovern, obviously done a hamstring tendon. He'll be out for a long time, and you've picked up Jaden Hunt. So what have you liked in Jaden Hunt's game?
Well, Jaden Hunt's very first game, he put in a score of 30-40 odd, extremely disappointing.
44, 86, 84.
Yeah, so I think, we'll give his round one performance a pass. We'll just say that's round one, working your way into the team. But he's actually getting a lot of time up on the wing. Mm-hmm. And I think with the injuries to West Coast midfield in the week just gone, I think we're going to see him move up into play more predominantly in that wing role. He's been hitting the scoreboard as well. He's kicked 3 goals this year.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to like there. And 2 scores at 84 in a row. At the moment, he's sitting on my bench. I think it's just a pretty easy pick up off the scrap heap.
Yep. No, fair enough. So injury carnage at the Eagles. So Jeremy McGovern did a hamstring tendon, and I heard Liam Ryan when did Liam Ryan do his hamstring?
Well,
because he fell on his head.
It must have been sometime throughout the game, because I don't see how it could have happened during that contest, unless he did it trying to run when he came back on. But he's done the same hamstring. Some saying as bad as McGovern's, and possibly surgery as well.
No, I think they're both in for surgeries. Footy Rhino on Twitter, I think I saw that.
Well, if Footy Rhino said it, it's absolutely gospel.
I think he said it. But
yeah.
Anyway, we'll keep going through the transactions. So, interesting one. Lennys actually delisted Matt Crouch potentially in the last 5 minutes, because last time I refreshed that, it wasn't... the most recent one was you picking up Jaden Hunt. So that's interesting. So Matt Crouch, I thought I heard he broke his leg at the start of the year. We mentioned that on the podcast in one of the early episodes. But I heard that he actually played well in the sample on the weekend. So he must be back.
Well, he's a former pig, Matty Crouch.
He is. And Berry has just gone down with an injury. So you know what? I did mention I'm looking for some midfield depth.
He
so
might
that could be half a chance to jump into
but...
Nalvinator's team. You know what? I'm going to do that live on the podcast. I'm going to pick up Matt Crouch.
Live on the podcast?
I don't want anyone else to get him.
Well, mate, maybe I'll do it as well. Let's see who does it first.
I don't know who to dump, though.
Nah, to be fair, you can never discount a former pig. He's been horrendously out of form the last couple of years, but if you can get him in your team, I certainly wouldn't frown upon that selection.
Crouch.
Just as Nick dives into...
Does it need to wait 24 hours before you can pick someone up or something?
I think that was for restricted free agents, and I think everyone's a normal free agent now after round 2. I think that's how it works. The gurus can correct me if that is wrong. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section of our YouTube video. And also like and subscribe. Because I just picked up Jaden Hunt straight away.
I think you can get them, but if someone delists them, I'm not sure you can pick them up straight away, which I might be completely wrong. But I'm trying to search Matt Crouch and I can't find him. So I'll try and get Crouch before we release the podcast episode, so no one sort of takes my intel. But
good
I think that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that at all.
A few other interesting ones. So I dumped Dyson Heppel, so there's been a bit of talk about him and if he's even in the best 22. Where does he sit at Essendon going forward? So I initially picked up Wilmot as a young player, then I ended up seeing Will Powell coming back from injury. So I've got Will Powell, player of the future.
Yeah,
potentially play in my field.
No, good pick.
So that's another recent one. Taron Thomas has been delisted.
Taron?
I don't know. I've heard both.
No one's called Taron.
Taron, okay. So, talented player, isn't he? Does he have a future in the league? Are we going to get controversial?
I think let's get controversial here, because I think he needs a year out of the game.
Yeah.
So I think if he plays, his ceiling is sky high. He could be a 100+ player. He was, pre-season, a lot of people were getting him in their classic teams, thinking that he'd be a future star, or just a star this year. So it's just if he can get his act together. So we've talked about attitude.
Or if he's allowed back. Because I think the reason why he got sent away again is because his attitude wasn't right. So he got sent away, he came back, more allegations came out. Then in North Melbourne's statement, they also said he still has a lot of work to do on his attitude and something along those lines. And Caroline Wilson was all over it on Footy Classified on Monday night. So just go check that one out for some direct quotes. But, yeah. Are you thinking of getting him? No, I'm not. I'm not sure. where he sits.
I don't know if ethically I can get him in my team.
Literally, I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't know if I want that sort of reputation.
Now doesn't stand for that.
Yeah, spacemen have ethical and moral standards, and we have a code that we live by, and Taryn's not meeting them at the moment.
Yeah. So I thought this would be a good segment to sort of go through the transactions, but there's just too many to sort of go over them all. And I don't think it's that interesting anyway. I think the audience are falling asleep.
But what it's good to see with a lot of transactions is that people are involved. People are getting amongst the draft league. Yeah, so it's good to see people are taking action with their teams this year. All right, so we'll jump into looking at the league's ladder after round 3. And Nick, we can see that Pet Money Sniper, who we criticised heavily at the start of the year, is sitting undefeated on top of the ladder.
To do that with selecting Perryman as your first midfielder is honestly so impressive.
Unbelievable. Like, is his team overperforming? Did he make some crafty selections later down the piece that we were sleeping on? What's your take on it, Nick?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I definitely think he's made some good selections that have sort of come on. So we always knew his backline was going to be good. I think we mentioned that in the first episode. Mm-hmm. And then the mid was the question mark, but he's gone some younger. Firstly, Setterfield. So
great,
it speaks for itself. We all know how he's gone. Josh Ward's put up some good scores. Warple's dropping off a bit. Tim Kelly's sort of bounced back a bit and had some good scores this year.
Probably in career best form at the moment, Tim Kelly.
And then our man, we speak about him every week, Dylan Moore. So he's been his best player by a mile.
132 he scored this week. No, I missed. I can barely watch West Coast games at the moment, let alone Hawthorn games. But 132 points. I did catch a bit of the highlights, and he is.
What does he look like?
He looks like a star. He doesn't look like a footballer's backside, but he is a star the way he moves. So classy and composed and calm under pressure. What a great pickup from Pet Money Sniper there.
Yeah, great pick. He got him early, and Liam Baker's been performing. I think he's playing in the midfield a little bit, so he's gone back-to-back hundreds. And then Kyle Langford in the forward line. He kicked 5 goals last week, so he's gone 95, 97, 76, bit down this week in a loss. So I just don't think he's had any really poor performers other than Perryman getting injured. He just, hasn't... Will Day's been a great selection, and Tim English, we knew what we were going to get with him. So I just don't think he's had anyone really disappoint him.
Yeah, looking at his team, I think it's his cup to lose this season. He's absolutely primed to take this season by the scruff of the neck.
Oh, you say that. I don't know. I'm still not a massive believer. I just don't think there's enough star power. Darcy Cameron's injured, so it'd be interesting who he replaces him with. Likely Mitch Owens is on the Jack Graham and Mitch Owens. So yeah, not like for like, is it? They won't score as well as Darcy Cameron. But obviously you can't really fault him. He's top of the ladder undefeated. So well done, Pet Money Sniper.
And while Pet Money Sniper is top of the ladder undefeated, first in total points is Launch's Hail Destroyer.
You've said that right. Launch's Hail Destroyer.
Oh,
can you read?
No, mate, his brightness is down. Launch's Hail Destroyer.
Was it down last week as well? We stuffed it up. Destroyer.
Launch's Hail Destroyer sitting on top on 3,969 points. I think I got that one right. And yeah, his team has got star power.
Yeah, his team is good. We mentioned his midfield when we dissected everyone's team at the start, and straight away went, yeah, that's a great midfield. So they've performed as you'd expected. Whitfield will get back status soon, so that's going to add to his backline. I'm not sure who you'd even take off. Probably Blake Hardwick, even though he's just scored 100.
Did we touch on this last week, that he now has Peter Adams?
Yeah, I think we touched on it 1 week. I don't know how he ended up at, on this team. Oh, no, that's right. He had Braden Pruce and then didn't get selected in round 1. So obviously picked up Laddams. But yeah, this is a really good team. He's got McKenzie on the bench. Why is Jack Crisp on his bench? Jeez, he's got a good team. Shuey got injured. Yeah, look, this is a really good team.
Can't really fault it. Well done to Lanch's Whole Destroyer. So as we move down the ladder, let's just look at who's last in total points. And we had him on the podcast last week, and Coach Ashton of Avalanche has not had a great start to the season, wouldn't you say?
No, so self-proclaimed guru, isn't he? But just not performing at the moment. So midfield, he's got Will Brodie, who ended up getting dropped.
Sam Berry put in another abysmal score.
No, he got injured space.
missed
So
that
he
one.
was actually going pretty well, I think. 43% game time, 52. So he was back to his best, it looked like, and then he's done a calf. So
Back to above his best, it looks like.
no, he had a good year last year. I'm not sure if you were watching, but anyway, so Berry will have to come out. But yeah, overall, he's got a pretty good young midfield, but they just haven't really got him over the line. Matty Rao, don't know, he would have been hoping for him to really break out. He's gone pretty well without dominating. Heath Chapman got injured on the weekend. That's stiff. I'm not sure he was going that well anyway.
Matty Rao's score of only 78. He was pretty close to best on ground on Saturday. I watched that game and he was an absolute star. So if Rao's ceiling and on game day performance is only scoring him 78, I think that's something to worry about for Avalanche.
Having said that, he does have Sam Walsh sitting on the pine, just waiting to come back. So when he comes back, and look, I've got no doubt Will Brodie will be back in the Dockers team at some point, scoring well. So I don't think there's too much of a concern there. But at the moment, yeah, he's just not going all that flash, is he? Tanner Bruhn hasn't performed as his number one mid. Actually, no, he's got Canelo. It's just out of order. But yeah, I think that's why he's a big Tanner Bruhn fan, isn't it?
He's a big Tanner Bruhn fan, and I think it's to his absolute detriment at the moment.
Now, I've noticed Dev Robinson's sitting on his bench at the moment.
He wasn't there at the start of the year, was it?
Were you listening to Gettable podcast today? We're
bits
recording this Tuesday night, by the way.
Bits and pieces.
Wednesday, sorry, it's Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Normally Tuesday night.
Normally Tuesday
rescheduled.
night. Yeah, there was an illness running through the host. I listened to bits and pieces of the Gettable podcast, but you've clearly listened.
So Cal Toomey, obviously the guru draft and trade, mentioned that Dev Robinson might be finding a new home next year. And obviously being a West Australian boy, straight away you think West Coast and Freo. I'm not sure he's the fit at Freo with where they're at, with their inside mids. I mean, Will Brodie can't even get in there. So I feel like Eagles is probably the logical fit with being a young team. And I think you wouldn't have to give up too much in terms of draft capital with him being a second round pick who hasn't really come in and dominated. So I feel like his value has decreased since his draft. So I feel like it'd be a late second, early third pick that would get it done. Do you think Dev Robbo will fit in at the Eagles?
I think it's the logical choice for us to get him. However, I'm just not sold on him as a player. So I really wouldn't want to be giving up any more than a third round pick for him at this stage, to be honest.
What don't you see?
I just don't see, like, he's a little inside nugget, but I don't see the talent. He hasn't really come in and showed me anything to get too excited about. He seems like he's hard at the footy, he loves to tackle, but yeah, in terms of the Eagles side, we've got Jimby coming through, we've got Cully coming through, we've still got Kelly, Shuey's probably got a year left in him, as those inside mids. So I'm not really too sure if there's a spot for him, because we've got Elisha Hewitt coming through as well. But, if he can get him cheaply, I won't say no. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like at the moment he's quite similar to Matt Rao's game and the criticism that he's getting, where he's very in and under and struggles to really break out and sort of take uncontested marks. Or
if you watch Matty Rao live, he's a star. He just gets in.
He's a star at doing his thing, in and under, fighting hard for the ball. And I think Dev Robbo is similar.
But I don't think he's a star at doing his thing yet.
Well, he's pretty good at it.
I don't think you can compare him to Matty Rao just yet.
I think his game is very similar to Matty Rao. Now, I want to ask you, who do you think is taller, Matt Rao or Dev Robinson?
Well,
because I look at Dev Robinson and think he's very good.
Very small.
But he's, not quite big enough to be that big-bodied mid to excel at what he's good at, which is fighting hard for the ball, in and under, winning contested ball. Given that he doesn't have the traits to really break out or use his elite kick, for example, he needs to be a bigger body.
So you getting at that he's taller than Matty Rao?
No, I'm getting at that Dev Robinson, to play that role, needs to be a bit bigger, in my opinion.
We need to put on some size for sure. Again, what's he in his third year at the moment?
But anyway, what I was getting at is that... Sorry, I sort of cut you off again. I did that the other week as well. I want to get to my point.
Get to your point, mate.
He's 185 centimetres. I thought he was going to be smaller than that.
Yeah, right.
And Matty Rao's 180, so I thought it would have been reversed.
But Matty Rao's also built like a fridge, and he came into the comp like that.
Yeah.
But, there's years to put on that size. However, maybe Dev Robinson's just going to be a bit of a Jack Redden. Like, does his thing, solid contributor for the team, but isn't an absolute out-and-out star. So... yeah, again, going back to what I said, I wouldn't want to be giving up more than a third round pick for him at this stage.
Yeah. Cheers, I love it. Got our footy heads on for a second.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So anyway, that wraps up Asho's team and Dev Robbo. Now, just a random thing that's just come to my head is Elliot Yeo.
Yeah.
So, saw on Twitter that he could be available. He could not. Obviously, everyone had him in their classic team before the year. If he comes in this week for the Eagles, firstly, do you think he will? Do you think he should? And if he does, will he be in your classic team this week?
A few questions there. I think he will, purely because of Eagles' injuries to their senior players, and I think he provides a stable head down, probably in the back line to start with. But given his calf and soft tissue injuries, I'm a bit worried as an Eagles fan about rushing him back into the team. So I'm sure Adam Simpson will make the right call, but yeah, I'm a bit worried as an Eagles fan. But yeah, I do think he'll come into the West Coast side this week. In terms of coming into my fantasy team, I think it would be a great pick if I didn't have to shuffle a few things around to get him. So my backline's doing pretty well for me at the moment, with in my classic team with Doherty, Dacos, Day, and a few rookies in there. There's no one I'm really looking to downgrade or upgrade to get Yo in that position. So yeah, probably a no for me in my classic team this week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same boat. You couldn't trade him in, not seeing him play coming off an injury. I'm not sure why the Eagles would bring him in anyway off a calf. I think you play him in the waffle, limited game time, just ease him in. Especially against, honestly, they're going to get smashed against Melbourne. What's the point?
Yeah.
Going to take on, they won't win a hit out against Grundy, and they'll be against Oliver and Petrarca. So I just don't see the benefit in him playing. I reckon ease him in through the waffle.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I'm just a bit worried that we will rush him in, but we'll see what Simo does at 3:30 p.m. on Thursday.
We sure will. Now we'll review the big calls from last week. They were very similar, weren't they?
Yeah, well,
one of us got it right.
Big can go in quotation marks, I reckon. Because your big call, and I mustn't have been listening too close at the time, was that, tell us what your big call was, Nick.
I mean, we might have to check the tapes, but I'm 99% sure I said Sean Darcy will score 120. Space seems to think I said 100, which wouldn't have been a big call, I agree.
I still don't think 120 is that big a call against Bailey
Well, you
Williams
could have called me out on the time.
I was too focused on...
And I would have said 127, and I would have got it right.
Mate, 150 would have been a big call against those two. But you know what? Nothing was said at the time, so yeah, we'll give you. You got your big call right. Well done.
So I'm 1-1 for my big calls so far. Because one was a season call. We'll have to wait.
No. We did because I did a call about the Dacos brothers.
No, I'm saying I'm 1-1. I got one wrong.
I thought you said 1 out of 1. My apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my big call
How many have you got right?
I'm 0 for 2 so far. But my big call last week was so agonisingly close. And it was a big call. As far as big calls go, it was a biggie.
Okay. So
Luke Jackson, much maligned in the media last week. I said, you know what, he's going to bounce back this week. He's against 2 struggling up-and-coming ruckmen. 1.5 up-and-coming ruckmen, really. And so I was like, you know what? Sean Darcy, he'll get a ton this week, but so will Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson will bounce back and put in his first big performance of the year. He put in a big performance and came up with 95. So it got so close. I was going for him big time in the last quarter on Sunday, but he just couldn't quite get over the line for me. But yeah, my big call, I'm 0 for 2 so far. Nick will give you yours, even though I'm not too happy about it, but yeah. So you're 1 ahead of me in the big calls this week. Have you given much thought to what yours will be going into round 4?
No. But I'm looking at my team now, and I'm just going to pick a player. So Will Day, he's averaging 106, and he's got Geelong this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he's going below 70 this week against the Cats. And a lot of people are going to trade him in that still don't have him, particularly with Constable. I assume Constable won't be named again, which means more people will be trading him out that missed it last week. And I think Will Day will be a popular option because he's a bit cheaper than Dacos and Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon he's going to be... I reckon he'll have a disappointing week against the Cats, and Twitter will be going nuts saying that they brought in Will Day for a 60 or whatever he gets. So hang on, to be clear, he's going below 70 is my call.
Will Day to go below 70 against the Cats.
Yes.
Now
Did you
prediction.
hear that?
I'm just being as clear as we can so there's no confusion for next week.
Now, what's your big call?
Just give me one moment. Just need to check the stats, because one man that I brought into my team on draft night was Jake Stringer. He was one of the very last selections, and I thought, you know what?
Off no pre-season.
Well, was my last selection in
Okay.
draft as a forward. You know, you got to take what you can get.
He's not out of contract this year, you know.
Yeah, or someone will pick him up. Anyway, my big call against the Giants this week is Jake Stringer will kick 4 goals and score 100. So, coming off a score of 35, he's performed...
What was his game time? 80% for a 35.
I think we know Jake Stringer. You know, can be a bit inconsistent at times, and I think we've got to give him that first game to come back into it. Had a bit of a down year last year after almost All-Australian year before. He didn't quite get there.
I don't know. If he wasn't, he should have been. He was set almost the best player in the comp for about a month there.
Yeah, I agree. I remember thinking he was robbed, so I don't think he got in the team.
I reckon they played a genuine mid at half forward when it should have been him. Because he kicked how many goals did he kick that year, honestly?
He also was getting his hands on the ball a fair bit.
Yeah, so he was playing mid, but just resting forward, kicking goals.
41. He kicked 41 goals that year.
You got to AFL tables quicker than me.
I was already on it, looking at it. I went against GWS.
41 goals, 19 games.
But I think it was his second half of the year that year particularly would have been averaging over 3 goals.
I'm looking around 14 to 17. 29, 24, 25, 23. 4, 1, 3, 1, 4 goals.
Yeah, and then was consistent throughout the rest of that year. So yeah, I'm tipping Jakey Stringer to go back to that form, kick a bag of 4 and score 100 coming off a dismal 35 score. That's my bold
against
prediction.
The Giants. Okay. I like it. I reckon that is bold because he's underdone off no preseason, so I give you that. That is a bold call. So wrapping up our big calls, going into round 4, we'll now welcome our special guest to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to our guest for today's episode. We are joined by very special Coach Jacob of Lennys. Jacob, welcome.
How we going, guys? Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Thanks for jumping on with us. You've been tuning into the podcast this year?
I have. I've been loving it. Thanks for putting it on.
Any feedback for us, mate?
Not so far, actually. It's been quite good. I'd like to see a few more guests. I think who have you had on so far? Asho and Pet.
Asho and Link, Coach Link of Link Selection of Players. Yeah.
I'd like to see Petrus get on board.
Well, we have tried. He's a hard man to get a hold of sometimes, but he's certainly on our radar.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that.
No worries.
Sweet. So, Lenny, you've been a bit of a veteran of AFL fantasy, but I assume this is your first year in a keepers league? This
is my first time in a keepers league, yes.
Yeah. And what I have really enjoyed over the years is your team name. So it's been Lennys Lennys been in the name for a long period of time, but I think it was Lennys Lads, and it's now just changed to Lennys. So talk us through the origins of your team name.
So, ever since I was young, obviously you wouldn't know it, but I've been playing fantasy for over a decade now, probably. But,
wow.
And my name it did used to be Lennys Lads, but then I matured a bit and just made it just Lennys. But the origin of the name is essentially when I was younger, I always wanted to be named Lenny, so in anything I would put my name as Lenny if it wasn't an official document. So yeah, that's the origin of that.
Yeah, I like it, man. I like how the name slowly matured over the years and it's evolved to just the single name for that excellent brand recognition. So what we've been asking our guests all year is your draft strategy going into the season. So did you do much planning or research prior to draft night? And yeah, just talk us through exactly what you were thinking.
I did do a heap of research. I had a few rankings and stuff up, but sort of went out the window because it was a keeper league, so I sort of had to rely on my knowledge and all that. And obviously I've started the season very poorly. I'm 0-3.
Cheers, mate.
My draft strategy was essentially... it changed throughout the draft, I should say that. I was quite happy with my first 4 picks, but they're not traditional keeper players. They're all about 27, 28, except for Darcy Parish. And then in the middle rounds, I sort of went for a win now, deal with it later sort of thing. So I got some older players there that are on my field at the moment. But as a result of that, I missed out on a lot of the young talent. So my bench and forward line are quite depleted, probably see. I didn't do a traditional keeper draft and been looking 2 or 3 years ahead. I sort of looked at this year and next, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, nice one. just on your selections, I want to ask you about one particular player, Harry Himmelberg. So you selected him towards the tail end of the draft, and obviously he was a big improver last year, playing predominantly at centre-half back. But the start of this year, he's averaging 45 and back to his traditional centre-half forward position. How disappointed are you in Coach Adam Kingsley for putting him there and essentially mucking up your draft decision?
Well, I'll actually correct you there, and this is something that I only realised 5 minutes ago, is that I actually picked 66. So I really consider that to be towards the tail end of the draft, unfortunately.
Tragic.
Which, but I guess the theory behind it was I sort of panicked because I didn't have any forwards and they all looked pretty horrible. And I actually do remember I did see a article of Kingsley saying that Harry was going to, he gave Harry the ultimatum of where to play, and Harry said that he wanted to play forward. So I guess I picked him hoping that was just a bit of smoke and mirrors, but it didn't turn out that way. But I'm just looking now, and the forward selections after Harry Himmelberg are quite poor / there isn't really any. But looking at that, I probably should have picked Zach Bailey or Liam Baker, which is a crafty pick from Petrus.
Very crafty pick from Petrus. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it was a very tough pick for all forwards after probably the first couple of rounds this year.
Yeah, I guess it's a gamble and hoping that he would go back to half-back or top, I reckon. I don't think he's been kicking too many goals, so...
No, you never know. Well, I've just drafted Cadner with number 1, so he hopefully isn't too far away. I'm keen to see how he goes, and
Absolutely.
You never know, it might end up with Hitwood in the back line, so it could be a good pick going forward. But
that is true. I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Now, I want to get really specific with some of these picks that you've made. So the first one I'm really curious about is Liam Henry, who started the season reasonably well in terms of fantasy, probably a little bit down last week with a 50. But I want to know where you see his future in the game and what your mindset was going into the draft selecting him.
I guess I got him quite late, so I'm not too upset about that pick, but I also don't quite like having him on my team. But I guess the theory there was I saw a lot of those untried youngsters going who'd probably be good in 4 or 5 years. Like I'm looking now, there's Bailey Humphrey, Matthew Johnson around that. I guess I thought I'd just grab a 19, 20-year-old and hope that he comes good, but that doesn't seem very possible at the moment, does it, with Liam Henry?
No, but still young, he could really come on. Now, another one I was curious about, and it was actually mentioned in our first podcast, was Lewis Young. And again, he was taken very late in the draft, but I feel like there could have been a few better options than a key defender, but I want to hear your take on it, Lewis Young.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I think that was my last pick. And I play where we do it on Excel and players get points for their intercepts, and Lewis Young is surprisingly one of the best players for that. So I guess I was a bit blinded by that and I drafted him, but I'm just looking at he averages 58, which is all right. But he's a young fella and he'll probably play in the Carlton defence for the next 5 or 6 years, you'd hope, and hopefully becomes more of an interceptor than a key pillar. So, but yeah, that was a late pick, and I guess some more youth.
Yeah, so you mentioned your 0-3 start. How are you feeling overall with your team? Are you still optimistic? Are you regretting any specific picks? How do you feel about your team sort of for this year? Are you in flag contention and also long-term with your younger players?
Well, sadly, I thought that this year was my year, but the 0-3 start didn't say that. But I am still quite bullish on my team this year. Because I've still got Rory Laird. Hopefully he picks up. Darcy Parish is one of the best mids in the game. My back line looks fairly strong. Got Rowan Marshall, but then my forward line's absolute eyesore with the scores of 52, 73, 22 and 40 this week.
Oh.
And my depth doesn't look too incredible. I'm just looking now. I do have Matt Crouch and Jared Lyons, who I need to cut. Yeah, I think I'm quite bullish on this year, but I'll need to get crafty at the trade table for future years, I'd say.
Yeah, look, Jake, I'm also a 0-3 start this year. In fact, you're the only team in the league that's sitting below me at the moment, which, I actually thought I was bottom coming into this, so thank you for that. But, I don't think we can write off anyone's team so early on in the season. Harry Morrison scored 96 last round. Let's hope he can build from that. Jake Saligo is an interesting pick and an interesting player. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. And Tom Mitchell, who knows, he could get back to his piggy ways of 2018. I don't think we can write off anyone's team so early on in the season. And a 0-3 start, I think only upwards from here, Jake.
I agree, mate. Thank you for those kind words.
No dramas at all. We got to be bullish at 0-3. Next question I wanted to get into is that I'm not sure if you've been able to take a good look over everyone else's teams, but do you fancy anyone else's squad in the league? Like, who do you think is the best chance of going all the way this year?
Other than yourself.
I played Tickle My Taranto on the weekend, and I'm sorry to him, but I thought his team was absolute dog shit. But managed to beat me. He's got a lot of outside, and he's got a lot of young players who will probably come good, so he might be good for the future. I remember on draft night, I thought Lincoln and Lewis drafted quite well. Mm-hmm. Looking at Lincoln's team, it's probably overperforming at this stage with Mason Wood in there. Let me look at Petrus's. He's top.
I don't know how he is top with his first midfield selection.
I think he's another one who might also be overperforming at the moment. Liam Baker, 110, and our boy Dylan Moore's 132.
Oh, his first midfielder was Tim Kelly, was it?
No, it was Harry Perryman.
Oh, wow. Eddie has got Will Setterfield, though, which is a good pick. Will Day, Josh Ward, Hayden Young as well. Tim English.
Yeah, Tim English is a great pick.
I think Petrus is looking quite good, but I think the wheels might fall off this year.
Yeah.
But he definitely has the best future team.
Yeah. No, hard to disagree with that. Now, Jake, we are obviously a Keepers League podcast specific to keepers, but we do want to just quickly touch on your classic team. So I actually was versing you this week, Nelvinator, and I noticed you had Baz Linker as captain, so that would have been disappointing for you. But talk us through your classic team at the moment and how come you chose Bailey Smith to be captain on a Thursday night when you could have made him vice-captain?
Yeah, this is something that's happened to me every week this year so far. I have forgotten to do the loophole, and as I said, I've been playing fantasy for a long while, so it's quite disappointing to do that. I think I scored 1949. That's pretty terrible. I actually don't mind where my team is at. I started with Tom Green and LDU, but it seems like everyone's got them now. I can assure you Bailey Smith will be getting traded this week and be using the loophole from now on. So, watch out. If you like the strategy I went with of 2 gun defenders and then 4 rookies, it's looking all right, and then pack the midfield and forward line out a bit. I have made some terrible errors, like I traded Fergus Green in for someone. I traded Harry Sheasel in late before the first round and then forgot to put him on, which cost me. And then the captain decisions have been killing me. So, and I know how important the captain is to decide, and I don't think Smith scored 100 for me this year, so... Yeah, there's definitely improvement, but I think I'm 0-3 in that as well, am I?
I'll just have to get the ladder up there, Jake. But as a fellow Bailey Smith owner, I again share your disappointment.
Yeah, you've got to win.
You've got to win, yeah. One win was also against my team, so I should know that. You managed to scrape over the line by 8 points against me, which was absolutely heartbreaking. Considering I had Rory Laird's 144 as captain that day as well, and you had a Bailey Smith 80-odd. That one definitely stung. But, no, again, think you're certainly bullish on your classic team as well. Yeah, again, share that Bailey Smith disappointment.
Out on Doherty as well. I thought he was well overpriced, but he seems to be living up to it.
Yeah.
Just that selection. So basically the Brayshaw selection instead of Doherty and the Smith selection instead of anyone good. So, but other than that, I think I picked a nice team.
No, I like the look of your team, Jake, and I think you've got a bright future this year. That just about wraps up all our time we have for you on the podcast today. I just want to thank you for coming on, Jake.
Thanks, mate.
Your length and wealth of experience is absolutely insightful, and it's an absolute pleasure to have a fellow veteran of fantasy on the podcast.
Thanks, Lenny.
No worries. Thanks for having me, and I will just say quickly, I did have a look at the teams, and I just got to put in there, I think Lanch's Hole Destroyer, I don't actually know this man personally, but I think he will go a long way this year in fantasy.
An experienced Keepers League head, that man. Thanks, Jake. Yeah. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, he was a good guest, wasn't he, I feel?
Yeah, he spoke really well, I thought.
Bit hard over the phone. We couldn't get him into the studio on sort of late notice.
Yeah.
So it's always challenging, not face to face.
But he spoke really well, gave a lot of good insights. Again, a fellow veteran of AFL fantasy, and similar to us, like his first foray into Keepers League draft. So, yeah, it was really good to get him on.
Yeah, great to hear that he told me off air that he's finally going to actually transfer me for the Classic and the Keepers payment.
Oh boy, really? Hasn't
Yeah,
paid
so
yet.
we're paying up front this year, and I do want to call out a few people who haven't paid so far.
Please go.
There's also a few that have just chosen not to open my Facebook message
You are
as well.
kidding.
They've been active.
They've been active.
Just
Oh,
choosing
you've
not
got
to
the old
open it.
green dot and still ignoring.
Yeah. So actually, I won't out them. I'll give them 24 hours after the podcast is released, and then they'll be named and shamed. So most people have paid though. So I want to thank everyone that's paid for Classic and for the Keepers League. We've had some issues last year with, I will name him, Asho not paying up, deciding to quit halfway through the year in Classic last year, saying he didn't want to pay when he agreed at the start of the year. So we're trying to avoid that. But like I said, this is a warning. 24 hours after the podcast drops, I'm naming and shaming the people that haven't paid. Thoughts? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely fair. Pay up. That's very silly for those who haven't.
Thanks for transferring me, by the way.
No worries, mate. Always happy to. So, Nick, tell me about your Classic trades this week. We'll just go away from our Keepers League at the moment. Who have you got in the big guns?
We do want to pivot a bit and slowly emerge into the Classic space, I reckon.
Yeah, we'll just
that's
dip
a
our
real passion of mine.
We'll dip our toes in the water
We
for
will.
now. Yeah.
So for me, I've got two options. First option is Charlie Constable is named, which I really hope he is, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Powell's come back, Weller's come back. He wasn't even sub. I don't think he's going to play, but I'm hoping he is. If he is, I'm trading Sean Darcy, who got 128 last week, and I'm getting Brodie Grundy, who takes on the Eagles, and Bailey Williams. And obviously Max Gorn's not playing. So that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I feel like Constable's not going to be in, so I'm just going to trade him. So Warple is going to go to Van Rooyen,
Great.
and Constable is going to go to Tom Stewart, which brings Chandler onto my field and Goulden into the midfield. So I feel like Chandler and Warple will have similar scoring. Warple probably will outscore him, but won't be by much. So basically, it takes Miller Bergman off my field in the back line, who I had for 1 week last week.
Yeah, no, good trades. I like it. I'm not too different from you. I'm just not even expecting Constable to be named. So I'm trading him along with Jason Horne-Francis, and I'll be getting in Jacob Van Rooyen just like yourself, and also Josh Fahey in my backline.
Oh, you got some mail? Is he going to come in?
Well, that's what I hear.
He went well in the VFL last week, didn't he?
Yeah,
I heard he got a big score.
Went very well in the VFL last week. To be honest, at the moment, sort of one of those placeholder trades. I'm hoping he gets named so I can downgrade Constable to a 200k player and get a bit of cash in my bank. So at the moment, I got 580 sitting in the bank for next week with those two trades, and yeah, we might have a little something special in store for one of my rucks next week. So
Oh, TDK.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely not Rowan Marshall. So yeah, we'll stay tuned on that one. But yeah, all in all, my team.
Can only go up from here, Matt, your team.
Well, you'd hope so. Like the rest of Australia got Setterfield and Zeebelin last week, and they didn't go as well as anyone would have thought.
See, this is Nuffy chat, mate. They're both underpriced. They've both got a low break even. They scored well enough for what you wanted them to.
I would have wanted Zeeble to get more than 78. And Setterfield and 88. Look,
When his break even was 20 odd.
yeah, I mean, we both know it's all about team value at this stage of the year anyway, so yeah, I guess upon reflection you're right, but I do want those big scores so I can creep up in the rankings a little bit.
What is your team value, just quickly?
My team value at the moment is 16.64
16,
million.
it starts with a 1-6.
With 582k in the bank, so let's just keep that quiet. So plenty to work with there. What's your team value now,
I'm glad you asked. 17.47. So team value for me is very important early on. You got to know the rookies. Please tell me you had Chandler from the start.
I did not have Chandler from the start, but you know, it's not as bad as some people not having Harry Sheasel from the start.
I think Jake was the only person in Australia that didn't have Sheasel.
You may be correct there, but you know, had Fergus Green and he's just doing absolutely swimmingly.
Okay. Now, team value is king. You heard it here first. But I think that wraps us up. We've touched on everything.
Touched on
Have
everything.
a good week. I think the podcast's going well. The year's going well.
I mean,
Everything's...
another episode with no edits.
Yeah, no stopping, no starting, no stuff ups.
We're just absolutely killing this, Nick.
I know, it's not that hard.
It's really not that hard. I know they've always said anyone can do it, but I think we're smashing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave a comment with any feedback or tell us what your classic trades are for this round. Leave a comment below and yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for joining.